Why, hello there. Welcome to Ascending Tech, where we dive into projects shaping the cryptocurrency space. I am the Ascending Man, Nate McGettit. You know it. And today we're going to be talking about something that could be a huge help on the Pulsechain network. So Axis has already had his experiment of a token that he uses to teach people about kind of how the market works, things like that, right? But now it looks like he's taken this even further by introducing Alive to help boost up all of the solid index coins through bonded liquidity, as well as possibly just Pulsechain in general, I will say. But before we jump in, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so that way you never miss an episode, because you definitely don't want to miss one of these. And hey, if you find any value, please don't forget to share this with your fellow crypto enthusiasts. It helps more than you know. So now, here's the kicker, all right? What we're covering today could be the single biggest insight to boost your investments and level up your portfolio. So, hey, stick around so you don't want to miss this one, all right? Now, let's dive in. Axis Alive, my man.
Cheers, brother.
First off,
thanks for having me.
For anybody who has not, who doesn't know who you are, who's living under a rock.
Sure. Well, hey, I'm originally I was a Bitcoin and Ethereum miner that got into the space back in 2017. I was first made aware of Bitcoin, but mostly just in the same day about Bitcoin mining, about the idea that you could print money legally through this process called mining. And so that intrigued me because about a decade before that, I had stumbled into something called Zeitgeist, the movie. It's a documentary that goes deep on the monetary system and religious systems in the world. And it kind of cracked my mind open and made me really question the solidity and the structure of, how money works and why money is the way it is and why it's so hard to get ahead in this world. And then that led from one thing to the next. And there was a cry for help in a lot of ways. Our world needed some solution to the money problem. And so long story short, found out about Bitcoin mining in 2017 early on. I think Bitcoin was priced around $2,000 to $2,500. I made my first half a Bitcoin purchase and it was terrifying. I remember shaking at the computer buying my first Bitcoin, thinking what am I doing? This could be terrible, or this could be the best thing ever.
It's all going to zero, right?
Exactly. And because of the volatility, and that was a foreign concept to me at the time, but which is the irony of when you really dig into what money is, it really kind of crypto change, it reframes your entire structure and your worldview. And so I ended up going forward with that and building out a Bitcoin and Ethereum mining facility and ran that in 2019 and sold it in 2021 at the top of Bitcoin on the first top in May, and walked away from that. And I had gotten into Hex with a very modest amount of money in the very beginning on day one, and had walked away from it for the first 8 or 9 months, and then saw what happened after Godwell came in and the amount of gains that my small little investment had come to. And I was like, well, there's obviously something more here that I'm missing. And so I'm hoping that this all ends up being the similarly for Pulsechain, is where people have bags of this Hex and Pulse and all these other coins, maybe that they've accumulated over the years, and they wake up one day and they're like, wow, that's worth a lot more than I remember. There must be something here, because that's the same thought that I had when I saw Hex go up to do its first 100x. And so I love the Richard Hart ecosystem. I think Pulsechain is an amazing blockchain, and I think we're in good hands. And the future is very bright. And I decided on a whim that I guess the backtrack a second. So the reason why Axis token ever became a thing was because, that was a Hex maxi, right? As much as you could be. I thought that Hex was the solution for the money problem, because you had this first ever chart of future market supply, and it's all user generated, users stake to get the yield. So it felt like more fair and competitive way to get ahead in the world. And so if it was mass adopted, the guys that got in early and went long were going to do the best. And I liked that concept of passive income already coming from the mining world. And so when Pulsechain launched, a few years later, Funding Jim is one of the bigger names in our community. He went ahead and created like 30 influencer tokens on Pulsechain using Go Pulse Mint, which is just simply you put in a ticker and a name and a number of supply and it mints it. And I was not one of the ones that got picked. And I was so grateful that I wasn't picked, because the last thing I wanted was my name on somebody else's shitcoin. And so I
That's funny, man. That's real funny, actually.
and so then I don't really know who made the decision. I don't think it was me, but somebody in the community that's close to me that you guys see me stream with a lot decided to hit the button and create a couple of tokens, and it just showed up in my wallet. Like the original supply showed up in my wallet. And so from that day forward, I had to figure out what to do with these coins. And looking back now, I could have never envisioned what actually ended up happening, which was that this token, which was just a simple PRC20, became like a magnetic attractor of whales. And over the year and a half it's been out, the coin prices went from less than a penny to $98,000 a coin, and actually flipped Bitcoin for a few hours. I think Bitcoin was around 65, 66,000.
That's wild.
And we flipped it and went to like 98,000. And I was like, damn, we just missed 100,000. But I went to bed, it was like 70 something thousand. Then I woke up and it was back at like 65,000, but it had ran all the way up to 98 and crashed back down. So I'm like, wow, that was crazy. And that was at the same time as Solid X did like a 200,000 X or something. It was like a ridiculous number from the starting price. So what an exciting time, and now we've just been kind of recovering from all that crazy price action on the Solid index since then. And in this time period, I've been able to get contacted by a dev who I've come to really respect and build out this little team, mostly that's behind the scenes, to build out this new package of software that's basically going to redefine and disrupt in some ways that and amplify Hex, because that's ultimately what this is all about in the end. So yeah, I'm cool with leaving it there, and that was a pretty cool intro, and thank you, and happy to deep dive into this system.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. And here's the crazy thing, folks. So we not only are interviewing Axis today, but we're also interviewing Alive. Sorry, I had to make that joke. Anyways, let's go ahead. I want to welcome everybody here who is currently in the chat. Thank you very much for watching. I want to go ahead and give you a little bit of a shout out. So first up here, we got Green Eats. Good morning, everyone, or good evening, everyone. No, good morning to you. How about that? There we go. We're going to switch it up this time. And then Chuck Siege, let's go, as well as True Moxie, because it's alive. And that's what we are. We are alive. That is true. Cotton Trust, 2 zeros are missing from the number of subscribers. I agree, and I'm going to be working really hard to try and close those 2 zeros, if you know what I mean. So, and then Bright Light Crypto, hello, 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 hello. Alrighty, so obviously everyone here is wondering one thing: what is Alive? Because I already talked a little bit about what the access token is, right? But what is the Alive thing that you're making up around here?
So Alive is a no admin keys, no pre-mint, small, like virtually zero starting market cap, audited code, immutable, meaning it'll live forever on the blockchain, modular, so you can build on top of it. It'll never have the gas fee problem of a hex stake. When a person emergency ends their commitments, aka their stakes, every user in the system wins, because that coin that got EES gets burned away. And it's like what I would consider an efficient capital burn. Like in some of these other systems, they just burn things just to make it more rare. But in this system, when you're burning Axis tokens, you're actually creating something else of value on the back end. And then that new token, you can do things with it. And so the utility is in this 2 token fusion, or this self-balancing thing that occurs when you have 2 PRC20s that you can bond in creative ways to create yield opportunities, farms, and you've seen the kind of build outs that you could do in terms of, I don't want to give too many things away because they're not done yet, but you can build other protocols on top of a system that the end product, which is Alive in this case, is both scarce and it monetizes the time value of money, and it can drive value down a pipe, so to speak, to create more room for growth for everyone involved through two payouts, a start payout and an end payout, which we'll get into the mechanics of that as we go along. I do want to say to the guys in here, like, you guys in here tonight are going to probably you're probably some of my most loyal followers that probably has bags of this stuff. You're going to get probably the best, most comprehensive breakdown of how the system works and how you can leverage it to make money.
Absolutely. Well, okay, so I guess kind of the question I've got here then is, how does the floating rebate mechanism or mechanic of Alive differentiate it from other commitment-based like DeFi models? And is there even any other commitment-based DeFi models that you know of?
Yeah, so I would say that, just Hex on its own is a commitment-based system where you have to in order to earn the inflation in Hex, you have to commit for some period of time. And if you end that stake or commitment early, you're penalized. And so it's a play on that system. And I think a lot of the Hex maxis will be very familiar with this system, and it looks the same and feels the same, but it has some differences. And so it's kind of like it's definitely competition for Hex and COM, but it's also going to be bonded to COM. So it's going to be beneficial for Hex because
that's interesting. Like competition for Hex and COM, but yet it's still going to be beneficial.
That's right. So the competition is that if Axis and Alive works, it proves itself and it works, that means that because the mechanics are similar to Hex and COM, it's on the burden is on the Hex Staker class to adopt COM to make it more effective than the Axis Alive system is, because they're very similar. Axis is burned and locked away for up to 8 years. And for doing so, Alive is minted in a start payout and an end payout. But the start payout and the end payout creates a total, and that total is representing the value of what was burned for how long it was burned for. So when you burn a coin, there's going to be a certain amount of Alive that's minted, and it's just simply burned amount of Axis times number of days. And that's how that calculates roughly your start and end payout. It just splits the start and end payout so that it's more heavily weighted, that the end payout gets more of the percentage of that value that got burned. So that most of it's on the back end. And so in COM, Hex stakers can stake Hex, but they're only really getting any meaningful amount of COM from their start payout if they go really long, like longer than 10 years. If they are only going like 2 to 5 years, or even, you have to go longer than 180 days. If you're going shorter, you're not getting any value. You're not getting any COM. So the whole system is set up to make COM or Alive super scarce and hard to get for short-term people. Only long-term committed people can actually get the privilege of minting that start payout, which is where the instant rebate comes in. Now this is the point where most people would say, well, I don't give a shit about long-term anything in crypto. I'm not in this for that. I want immediate gratification. And in that case, there is a play for you too. You would want to ratio trade Hex and COM or Axis and Alive, or maybe any combination of those 4 coins, because they're going to find themselves in range-bound patterns a lot. Just like COM has been in like a 5x window like this for like 180 days, just ping-ponging over the months. And what that does is it sets up nicely for you to like multiply your Hex stack by rotating in and out of COM over time. And so the same thing applies here for ratio traders that want to do it with Axis and Alive as well. They will be tethered together because the very mintability of Alive comes from the amount of Axis that's being committed through the system.
Excellent. All right. So how about this then? Can you explain the role of the modularity in Alive's contract design and why it's important for future scalability?
Well, so yes. And don't let me forget to come back to the instant rebate when we pull up the demo on the screen. But to get on to the point of, this is important to probably nail down right away, security, right? How can anyone feel good about locking their money in the blockchain for such a long period of time? Well, in this case, this has been audited by CertiK, so the code's good to go. Signed off, audit passed. There's a few things in there you can go read if you want to know more about their findings on how the contract works. And then the modularity component piggybacks off of the immutability component, meaning there's no admin key and there's no pre-mint. The only people that can mint this is people that hold access in the community supply. And the community supply is defined as coins that are not in the core address. And so there is like an OA style address in Axis, and that's been transparent and public since day one. And that has not inhibited the Axis price from going up billions of % against Pulse, and for like almost a dozen whales to adopt it. So if anyone has that concern, but so that community supply is important to know, and that's why that's so present and available for your knowledge on the dashboard. So with the modularity component, it's like, well, once you have this super rare gold, this digital gold in the form of Alive, due to the compression process of refining Axis coins down into Alive tokens over, potentially decades of time, you're going to have this set of people that believed in the system long enough and have all of a lion's share of the supply of the Alive. And if they have that, they can have more control over how much people can get paid to come in and out of the system. So the idea is, how much can where can the instant rebate sit to get more people involved and interested in buying Axis off market and committing it to the system. And the more people that adopt it, the more you're going to have to find use cases for the token, because you don't want people to just only be able to ratio trade, because that only services a small percentage of investor profiles. Yeah. Like, you want to be able to service long-term value investors, short-term ratio traders, or like swing traders, and then short-term like pump and dumpers. Like, you want to service the entire spectrum of person that's going to be interested in a cryptocurrency to get the most adoption and speculative stickiness involved in the contract. And so once people have their Alive tokens, beyond just trading, we want to give them options for yield. So through farms, through gauge pools, through potential other add-on contracts that could give you additional utility. We want to get through the launch phase. We want to get all of the front end up and running first over the next, because it'll launch in waves. So when it launches, it'll be commitments page first, so people can start getting the initial supply out and deploying some Axis and playing around with the coins and the liquidity pools and stuff. And then a few days later, we'll bring on the stats page, which is a huge component. And then in the following weeks after that, we'll come online with the leaderboard and the liquidity stats and the market details page. So it's very simplified user experience. We designed the user experience first to make sure that this was like something that somebody could load up on their phone or on their computer and simply understand what's going on. It doesn't have to be hard. And if you're used to Hex, this will look very similar.
Excellent. All right, so let's head back over to the floating rebate mechanic, right? Mm-hmm. So it incentivizes participation through rarity, right? So how do you see this affecting liquidity and like trading volume over time?
That's right. So the instant rebate. So this is what's interesting. And if you don't mind, I'm going to pull up my screen so we can go through
let's do it.
A couple of examples as I talk about this.
Sounds perfect. And while you're bringing up the screen, I'm going to go ahead and say hello to a few more people who have popped in, such as the Pulse Godfather. Better buy Axis or have fun staying poor. I agree, actually. And yes, I have bought quite a bit of Axis. Then we got, I've got my own, sorry. And then it's our own Pulse Jutsu with Fast Abdul. It's good to see you, Abdul. I'm here for the tech. You're obviously here for the tech, that's for sure. Did you know that Abdul is a total techie and he doesn't care about money at all? Never mentions how much money he could make, ever.
No, he's never mentioned a bribe in his life.
Ever. All right, then we got Warren Lee with Let's get it. Heck yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And then we also have Steady Pup. What's up, boys? We are alive. Yes, we are. And then, oh, that was you down here. I was like, wait a minute. Then
Yeah,
we have
thanks for
Access and Alive
you guys that are here again. Thanks for coming in, and thank you for having me, Ascending Man, because I feel most comfortable sharing the details of this system with somebody who actually cares and wants to participate. I would rather onboard 1 or 2 hardcore users that are going to be here for a decade and have them in and marketing for it than bringing in 1,000 degens that are going to try to pump and dump it, because this is a long-term value play for most of us. That's how you get access to get to where it is. I'm not saying that it can't go on huge price runs, because we've seen access 10x in a day before. So it's like that's happened provably more than once. That's done that. So I'm not saying that's not possible either, but I just want more people here that cares about understanding the mechanics, because it's really ultimately all comes back to hex and com, improving that system so that people adopt com, so that we get more people thinking long term on hex, which will increase the value of the entire network of Pulsechain.
Yeah, and see, here's the thing too. So you know how I always talk about, Pulsechain City, right? And in Pulsechain City, it's centered around this financial structure, this financial building that's turning into a skyscraper at this point, and it's called, that building is called Hex. And now we got Hedron going on. There's Com in there, right? Now we've got Actuator, right? Now you're exactly, and now you're kind of like, you're almost connecting, like it's no longer just going up like this. Now you're sort of connecting Alive as like another building over here, and it's just, the whole area is just getting a lot bigger. And yeah, no, this is, it's good, man.
That's absolutely right. It's like everyone's got to approach it in their own way, and the way we could approach it was, and this kind of came up in the Degen Roundtable stream. You guys helped me find this clarity, this moment of clarity, when we were talking about supply. I think what were you just saying? You were talking about
the Pulsechain City.
Pulsechain City and the lateral movement of and building on it, and building it in a way that it wasn't like a direct build on top. And that was important, because I only had the Axis token to start, right? So I didn't, the Axis token on its own is like a $1.6 million TVL, but the Axis token, Solid X, some of our connected pairs, that's like a $5 million pool. But that $5 million pool of shared liquidity can't really move a $40 million hex liquidity pool directly through brute force. But what we could do is we could bond to com, which incentivizes long-term hex staking, and make that valuable enough, because that's only a little $200,000-$300,000 pool. So that $5 million pool web could connect to this little com web, or interlink with com. And then if this pool, this $5 million pool of Axis Alive and Co pumps, well, then it can drag the com price up, which gives new long-term hex stakes more value to extract from the com start payout. So it's twofold
for more people to start staking, right? Longer.
Yep. It like, even like right now, like I think the best rebate we got all year on com was like 20%. At one point, you could stake for 15 years and get 20% USD value back of the stake at the time of the stake if it went for 15 years. And I'm pretty sure Crispy Man actually captured that. I'm pretty sure he staked for 15 years and captured 20% on the com rebate. So that was, at some point, think about this. Let's say you go into the future and Hex had a crazy bull run, and let's say Hex is at 10 cents. And so, or let's say Hex is just at a price that's unbelievable. And somebody's got like millions of dollars of Hex, which could be a lot of us at that point. What's going to be the difference maker between you staking and not staking? That could literally, not the whole bag, but a percentage, could literally be just, oh, I can get 20% back instantly, or I can get 50% back instantly. And to get there, we need to grow the liquidity pools and make com appreciate in price. And Johnny Sachs popularized this thing called the secret weapon strategy, which would be a way to get com there by using these balancer pools on Fux. And so we're using a combination of strategies with these two systems to both prove it and make it happen at the same time. Because Hex and com on its own, the adoption's been quite slow for com. Like total holders is pretty low compared to Hex. And so to get there faster, we figured, well, let's just prove it with this other system that's got a much smaller community supply, that we can really amp up the speed at which this occurs, so that you can hopefully get enough interest just, on its own right, just by creating more value for com.
Absolutely. Alrighty, and then real quick, we got 3 more people who just popped in. So Cryptic Life, let's go, baby, let's go. As well as Tam Tam, what's up, fam? It's great to see you. Glad that you're here with us. As well as Hexagon 720, and he is here. I have water today, but I'll clink that for you. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and bring up the screen here, and we're going to be talking about the rebates here. So coupon rate. All right, cool. We can see it.
Yeah. So maybe I'll start this. I'll come back to this in a second so we can do some draws. But this is what you load into when you go to axisalive.app. And so some of you guys have seen this, some of you guys haven't. It's very familiar. You just type in the number of coins that you want to push through the system and then the number of days. It could be 1 day all the way up to a maximum of 2,920 days, which is 8 years. And so for maybe just to like wrap your brains around what's possible here, keep in mind there's only 495 circulating supply, and that community supply will be shown up here on a live number. So right now it says 448, but that's testnet numbers. But in the live market, there's about 495 of these tokens out there floating around in the community supply. So you can actually calculate what the theoretical maximum amount of coins that could be emitted from the system if they were all put in at one time, which would be 495 times 2,920 days. And this is the number that it shoots out. So what would be happening if, let's just assume that this is what happened for a second to just give you guys a theoretical number. If all of the coins in Axis was committed to the system for the maximum length of time, half would be burned. That's a constant. No matter what, half gets burned, half gets locked. So this here, 247 and a half Axis, which is valued on testnet, which is valued at 2.7 million. It'd be double that on mainnet, or a little more than double that on mainnet. Let's just say it's like $5 million would be completely locked away for 8 years. And that means that you just removed $5 million of market cap for 8 years, which is going to create deflationary pressure, which is going to make Axis more scarce now. The other half literally gets burned, like completely permanently burned out of the system. And the cool thing about this system is it's burning it based on a user hitting a button. It's not just like automatically burning it, and it produces a productive asset in its place, which is alive, and it's paid out in 2 tranches. It's paid out as a start payout, and it's paid out as an end payout. The start payout you get right away, which is where you get this number here. The end payout is what comes out when the commitment or stake matures on year 8. So in this example, $2.7 million of Axis is permanently destroyed, and you get $4.7 million of alive in its place at the testnet price of, I think, $33. I think this is what this is at right now.
Yeah, it literally combines them together like that, and it's like, okay, well, here's what's coming out. But it's all about the commitment though as well, So you get like 20% right away of that, but then the other 80% is going to be later on, correct?
Correct. And there's a nuance to that, which is that the first guy in line that commits gets the biggest start payout. The next guy that comes after him gets a slightly lower start payout, but it boosts end payouts for everybody with active stakes. So the more that Axis is committed into the system over time, the end payouts are increasing for everybody. So everybody's benefiting from adoption through their end payouts. As those accrue over time, they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they balloon. But there's a limit to the amount of Axis that can be committed anyways. So you want to be early to get the biggest start payout, but you want to be, but the reason why people will come in later is because of this instant rebate being high, right? That's what will bring people in. And so in this example, again, so you basically are burning $5.4 million, or burning and locking $5.4 million, and then you're minting $4.7 million of alive, which that makes sense, right? Because 88%, 4.7 million is 88% of 5.4 million. And so that's where that number comes from. It's the number of units minted, which in this case would be 142,000 alive, times the price, which I think is like $33 on testnet right now. So there's a lot of variables here in this example, but this is the theoretical maximum number of units based on this supply getting max committed all at once would be 142,000, and that would be circulating for 8 years. And then on year 8, 247 alive would come back into the supply, and 1.3 million alive would come back into the supply. But really, all people would be playing with for the next 8 years would be the 142,000 alive, and there'd be no more access on market for 8 years, and this 80% of this alive wouldn't come out for 8 years. So that's the magic of the system, is that it pushes so much economic energy to the back end, and so it creates a game for the first 4 to 5 years where everything is getting more scarce.
Mm. So it's only for the first 4 to 5 years, though, that everything is becoming more scarce.
So kind of, but remember that Axis is permanently burned in this process. So Axis always gets more scarce. So that's the deflationary pressure, which that gets us into our like modeling now. So now we can model out what it might look like. So I would anticipate, like on launch day, you're going to get, imagine this is the 495 coins starting price, starting up here. I imagine in the first few days, you're going to see a lot of Axis get committed into the system. And then, maybe it starts to stabilize, and then maybe there's like a huge run up on price. And then you start to see something like this, that over the years, Axis is getting committed, and it gets committed, but Axis always remains deflationary in this example. Whereas alive, remember, only 20% is committed into the circulating. And so the alive supply might shoot up at first, and then it's really going to be a slow grind up. And it's not until like years 4 and 5 is where you're going to start to see big spikes up of increasing supply, which will create like a more of a parabolic amount of supply going into years 6, 7, and 8 of alive. But there's going to be always downwards pressure on Axis.
Yeah. So okay. So that's an interesting thought then. If you have one coin that is only ever becoming more scarce, and another one that is ever just kind of inflating, eventually Axis itself just becomes only alive.
That's right. That's right. And so the guy that can hold on to his Axis the longest, he might actually end up doing the best. We don't know. But by making people chase the instant rebate, you're making your Axis holdings more valuable, because they have to go market by Axis to get the alive instant rebate.
What's really interesting is it's kind of like a liquidity change. And what's really cool, sorry, this might be a little bit of a bunny trail, but an interesting thought came here. So it's a liquidity transfer from Axis to alive, right? And eventually Axis will no longer be a coin. Let's just go ahead and say, everyone sells, right? Eventually it's no longer a coin. Now, this method is fascinating for any type of token down the road, whereas like maybe it gets compromised by a government or something like that. It is a way that you could literally just take whatever was compromised and just move it to a new coin.
That's right.
In that form or that manner, you could never, it's perfectly decentralized now, because it can never be controlled at all, ever.
That's right.
So interesting model.
There's interesting things that happens with this system that will become emergent, and the more you think about it and the more you get involved in it, I think the more people are going to learn and figure out the stuff, like all of the little nooks and crannies that stuff can occur. So this is just supply and demand dynamics of alive and Axis over time. So generally, Axis gets more scarce, whereas alive gets less scarce. But in this process, the whole system goes up in value, because you're really looking at one market cap and not two market caps. And the reason why is because you're transferring the Axis market cap. So this is Axis. You're transferring that market cap through time into alive, and most of it is on the back end. So you get the little bit of market cap that gets given back right away, and then you have the most of that market cap gets pushed off later into the life cycle of the token. So, but this is a transformational process. It's like a coin going through hibernation or through metamorphosis.
There you go. I
Because
was gonna say evolving.
it's evolving. Yeah. Alive is the evolutionary end product of Axis. Yes.
So Axis then turns into Alive, and Alive will turn into Transcendent or something eventually. 30
Well,
years
so
down the
it's
road.
interesting because, the question of like, well, so I have this in the tweet here. It shows you like this concept of
Mm.
Axis supply contracts over time and Alive supply expands to meet the needs of the market over time. And so there's like we don't know. I think ultimately you want to have both, because if you can pair them together, if you can mint Alive and pair it together with Axis and they just kind of oscillate in price, well, then you're printing more of the whole system for yourself. Basically, that's why I find LP to be super advantageous for this particular system, the same way that I find Hex and Com to be advantageous. And you can see it when you look at the Hex and Com price as an example. Like, okay, this is Pulse. Let me get the Hex Com price. Hold on.
Hey, I like that Pulse chart.
I do too. I really like Com against Pulse. I like it better than the Com Hex chart.
Mm.
But so this is Hex and Com, right? And so basically all it has done is trade in this range for 419 days. So you could literally let me hold on. Let me get my tool here. Boom. Make a 5.7x, buy back 80% lower. Make a 4.8x. So far, it's given you a couple wicks, but mostly it's down 67%. But this oscillation, this range that this has been trading, I'm assuming that eventually, Com levels up and gets into a new range. That's the goal of Axis Alive, is to get Com to be able to get enough demand so that this can get pushed up into a new range.
Interesting.
But this, you could think of Axis and Alive in the same way. Is that, yeah, okay, there's could be the initial, Alive starts at 0 and works its way up against Axis and overperforms it like crazy, which should have knockoff effects on the Axis price as well, where they're both kind of climbing together. And then eventually it'll find a range, and that'll be where you want to set LP and just earn those fees and rewards from the gauged pools. But this is the way you want to think about this system, is like you're getting this contractionary effect on Axis where it's getting rarer and rarer and reduced down, but the Alive supplies, it's really not expanding until you get to years like 6, 7, and 8. And the reason why that's good. And the reason why is because, like, if I'm to change this number, let's do a 1 coin example for max length. 1 coin for max length gets you 287 Alive. That's it. So that's like a $27,000 coin right now, or $26,000 coin only gets you 287 of these things. So the ratio there is 1 to 287. But on year 8, you get back 1,200 more Alive plus your half a coin. So you're really committed then, because now you have way more dollar value of both. And now you become a power player in the system because you waited. If you kill it early, if you kill it after 50% before year 8, you lose all the Alive, but you can get back half your half of your deposit on your Axis. So it's kind of a cool concept. It's like, if Axis is so valuable, there are going to be people that are going to nuke their end payout and just take the Axis and dump it on market or whatever they're going to do, right? Because
that would not be smart, though. I can tell you right now that, I mean, when you look at these numbers right here, right, you're losing half of the coin of your original investment, right? Half of the coin. Already.
Well, you're paying for the Alive start and end payouts with this burned money. So you're paying for it with time and with your half an Axis. That's what you're paying to get to mint some Alive now and a bunch later.
Yeah, I could see some people, like maybe if Alive like takes off, they'll just end stake early, right, and just take that initial and go sell that, right? However, I really don't see why anyone would want to do that. Now that I'm thinking about it, because it's like you're still losing that 1 coin that you got, all right? You're losing half of it. Sorry, you're losing half of that, and you could easily, for all that alive, that like say it spikes really high, right? You would just need to wait a couple of cycles in which this stuff is going to be going up anyways, right? And so just wait a couple of cycles and you'll have a huge payout and it'll be well worth it. You know, this is kind of the same idea as like say with Hex, where it's like with Hex, really all you need to do is simply stake it out for a couple of cycles and Hex is just going to be going up, right? Now, obviously there's spikes here and there. And I think that's where people lose it. They don't zoom out enough. Because if you zoom out, you're like, okay, well, Hex is just going to be going up. You know, all these tokens are just going to be going up over time. But with with people being like, oh my gosh, there was a huge wick there, right? Then it's like emergency end stake, and oh well, now you just lost your principal. That was kind of useless of you.
Yeah, I think the best thing that can happen for the hardcore users that believe and are in this for the long term is that you get a lot of like midtermers that get to the point where this, they put in, this was on the testnet here, this would have been like $10,000, $11,000 of value. They put in 11,000, they got back 10,000 immediately. So they already got back 88% of their value. Let's say they market dumped it. And with slippage, they got like $8,000 back on their $11,000 investment. And so they are only in it for $3,000 now. And then they get to like year 6, and this $5,500 is now worth $55,000 or $550,000. Who knows how successful this could be with Pulsechain does 100 or 1,000x, right? So like this could be an amount of money that they are willing to forego the millions of dollars sitting in the end payout just to get $500,000 or something they've been waiting 6 years for, which would be ultimately the best thing for the hardcore class, because then all of this alive inflation gets permanently burned out of the system. Nobody gets it.
Yeah.
So now you got a permanent burn on that half a coin on the beginning, and then you got a permanent burn on that 80% of that alive. So all that ever got extracted was the half an axis and the original start payout.
Dang. So it's like forever up. These are some really good tokenomics, by the way. So I'm really curious then. How did this idea formulate? Like what happened? What was the crazy day that you got drunk or something? Was like, what would be cool if we made this a live token?
So I was driving to pick up my girlfriend's son from work, and I got a call from the communist dev, and he goes by Kodiak. And he's like, I have an idea for a system. And this was right around the time when the solid index launched. And so we had just gone through that crazy move where Axis hit 98,000 and SolidX did crazy. And I think at the time there was a token called the winged angel dude. You know what I'm talking? Wings, not wings, but anyways, there was another token that came out around that time frame that had pumped Icarus had pumped her a lot too. And so this was a kind of a conversation amongst like, the thought leaders of the time, right? And so, but Kodiak came to me and said, I have the perfect idea for a system, and I think Axis is the right token to use it for. And I'm like, all right, I'm intrigued, because I was already tapped in with the whole communist thing, and I thought that system had a lot of potential. And just let me check something quick, because I want to know where the COM price was when that happened. Yeah, because I had seen COM go up 5 or 6x in February, and then it was in a retrace here. So I was like already convinced that COM was something special. And I'm like, okay. So, and he kind of talked to me a little bit about the ideas. And so we started, he had a pretty good idea for the math about how the end payouts and start and end payouts would adjust as it was being adopted. And then we just got into the war room and started refining this down and having like, 5, 6, 7 hour long conversations in the back with our small team, and just hashing out like how you could break this game theory and all that. And I mean, it was pretty much the base idea came from Kodiak. I can't take much credit for that. I mean, I helped with the design of the user interface and creating the language and the structure, and Johnny Sachs helped with the mathematics of it, and in terms of like in the LP liquidity pools and how all this should be formulated. And then, you know, some of these other guys helped with marketing materials and building out the design of the front end. And then Cody, I put it all together. And so I owe a lot to my team, and they're an amazing group of guys that they're probably the most refined set of holders that I've could ever have dreamed of having. So it wasn't just, it actually, I just happened to be the thought, the guy that was on the stage, that was the good guy to rally behind. So I could get out there in front of the people and say, hey, we have a system here that's going to be really valuable, and we can bond it to improve Hex and Com to ultimately bring value back to the core or the root of why we're all here in the first place.
That's epic. I love that. All right, well, let's so a little bit of bunny trail there, but let's go ahead and let's bring this back around a little bit to what we were talking about here. So the Alive model starts with 0 tokens, all right, and then grows through user commitment. So what are the key risks and challenges of the approach to the token supply growth?
Yeah, so that's definitely something that we can talk about for sure. I'm interested in that topic actually, and it was heavily debated because you know how Alive can get inflated toward the end of, like, toward the brick wall period, right? Just like Hex has that point in 2030 where there's this huge brick wall of stakes coming off. There's a massive inflation. I don't think Axis Alive is going to be immune to that either. I think, you know, a lot of the biggest commitments will come off, you know, exactly 8 years from launch week, right? Because that's where you're going to get your initial supply distribution of Alive. And so getting through that is going to be an interesting hurdle for the system. But I think that, you know, a cycle and a half from now, 2 cycles from now, that if the market makers in this coin do the right things with their balances and stuff, that they should be able to support the ecosystem. We've already dealt with in Axis, for example. So this gets to the idea of like runaway inflation from Alive. There is a cap, right? Like you can only burn Axis to make it, and it's not all going to get to the end. And so there is a theoretical max, which was like around that 1.3 million Alive. And so then all that ends up becoming is another distribution event where, you know, you have to make some assumptions that it was somewhat successful and price appreciated, and then you get the drawdown in price, right? But the price game is completely different from the accumulation of real estate game, which is like more what the whales play. And so, you know, there's input costs and liabilities, and that's what makes the instant rebate such a key and important piece of this. Is the fact that it's a free market function means that the market is going to ultimately decide what's the right amount to pay people to onboard them, to distribute the initial Axis commitments across time and give it a nice distribution over time. Kind of like how Hex is becoming a better distributed staker class now versus in the beginning where it was just pretty much just 20, 30, year 5, year 10, you know, from day one. That's kind of been distributed now. You know, you have stakes coming off all the time, which makes it a more dynamic and robust system. And so we'll get there too with this system. But I wanted to make a point about like maximum inflation amounts and stuff, like with the Axis price chart. Going back to the beginning, these are weeks. Let me go to a 3-day to give more granularity. But like, look at guys, there's been times in here where guys that had like 10% of the entire supply of community supply or more in some cases, like here, a guy unloaded over the course of like 2 months, the dude unloaded like over 40 coins. And here was another time where another like 40-ish coins was unloaded. Here's another time where another 60 coins was unloaded over like a month and a half period of time. So there are periods in this history where the supply is hyperinflated from 1 or 2 guys to like the market. And that's what creates these drawdowns, which gives huge opportunity for market participants to capture a new price floor. And you could see that over time. And this is not different for Alive. Alive is just more units of the same system over time being distributed. And so it creates this price floor thing where it just keeps making higher and higher price floors over time. And so you want to capture those bottoms in the system however you can and capitalize on them. And if I go to like a monthly chart measured in Pulse, this is the most awesome way of viewing this chart, because it's literally just been stair stepping up and to the right against Pulse since
That
it
is
started.
gorgeous looking.
And you can see how it flips resistances support here at 87 million, then again at 208 million, then again at 373 million. And now here we are again. It's just like clockwork again. It even gave you a chance yesterday to buy it at this support level down here and then wicked all the way back up because one guy pump and dumped the coin. He came in and bought 10 Axis coins about a week ago, and he nuked everything yesterday. And so then the market bought it back in anticipation of a live. But this is kind of like the story, right? That Axis is trying to tell is that there's only the 495 coins in the community supply. And so assuming that those just continue to be distributed out and deleted away and distributed out and deleted away, Alive will perform the same way. And you gotta, I've been explaining things in absolute terms where it's like absolute number of Alive if it's all committed for 8 years on day one. But we know that that's not the reality. The reality is you're going to get a distribution across time of different kinds of commitments at different time lengths and different proportions of Axis at different amounts of economic energy pumping into the Axis and Alive ecosystem to get those positions to put them on. So all of that really makes for a very sticky and speculative instrument.
Yeah, absolutely. So this right here, basically what we're going to be getting, and what kind of, if I were to just kind of like break it down, is this is basically forever up. It's forever up. Truly, when it comes to Axis, this is the type of coin that you want to kind of like buy, set, and forget. You know, you really don't need to be trading it. I don't think this is truly a trader's coin. Now with Alive coming out, there is going to be some ratio trading that you'll be able to do, right? However, truly, when you look at the type of token that Axis really truly is, it literally is just set it and forget it, you know?
I like that you feel that way about it. I feel the same way about it. It's not everyone's going to feel the same way about it, but if you just look at the price history, I mean, this is literally just the weekly line chart. I mean, it's literally just proven that it can overperform in a big way.
You know what's really funny is Raul Paul. He was talking about how when he first got into Bitcoin, he sold it at like a 10x, and then it continued on 100x up, and he felt bad over that. However, he realized that even with him continually like buying lows and selling highs, technically speaking, if he just held Bitcoin, he would be way up.
That's right.
And there's no stress involved at all. I'm seeing the same sort of thing happening here, right? Where it's like kind of like how Bitcoin was. You literally just needed to hold Bitcoin. That's all it is. What is it? HODL, right? And diamond hands. And so I'm seeing this is the same sort of deal here.
Yep. And it's got more stickiness than Bitcoin, I think, because Bitcoin has itself only, and it pretty much heavily relies on centralized exchanges to be distributed. Whereas like with this one, it's a 2-token system. It's a fusion. So like each token is complementary to the other one and only mints proportionally to its counterpart. That's where I got into this idea of the fused market cap, and I used COM as an example. Like, if COM's market cap is $15 million and Hex's market cap is $320 million, they have a combined market cap of this. And what should happen is over time, Alive and COM should increase in market cap size through expansion and price appreciation, and the Axis supply will reduce, or the Hex market cap will continue to increase because it's that one, the principal gets reminted and the interest, so that one will inflate. But in the COM and Hex example, the COM should continue to get bigger and bigger, and there's so many units of COM that if the price just goes up double, I mean, you're talking about adding many zeros onto the market cap of that coin, because there's quadrillions of these units of this token. And so what you eventually you get is the COM market cap will probably meet or exceed the market cap of Hex at some point if it's adopted properly, and then they become this fused market cap. They already are fused, but they'll be more proportional to each other, so that long-term 15-year commitments are getting paid what their fair share for making that time investment. And so Axis and Alive is similar in that way.
Yeah. So one of the things, so fused market cap. Now, when you're talking about fused market cap, you're specifically trying to tie Alive with Axis, okay, like this.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you want to do is you want to try and tie Alive over into Calm, right? And so then it'll kind of like go like this. And then, from Calm, you're obviously fused with Hex. And so ultimately what happens is this is where you get the bonded liquidity, right? Where if Hex starts going up, then Calm starts going up like this. But then on top of it, so does everything else, kind of go with it. It's kind of like balloons, like a connection of balloons going up. Now, what you're trying to do though is you're trying to make it not just Hex bringing everything up like this on the string of balloons like that, right? You're not doing that. Instead, what you're trying to do is you're trying to create your own balloon to go up like this, bringing these other ones up like this, right? And so now it's multiple balloons. Now you got the biggest one, obviously, is going to be Hex, but then you've got, like, say, Axis, and Axis is always going to be deflationary, which will be appreciating always up, going up, correct?
That's
and
right.
so, and it's going to be because of Alive burning it that this is going to be happening. And eventually Alive is going to hit that point where it's no longer inflationary, but then becomes deflationary as well. And so that's when that's when this whole thing is going to be going up as well. And then the incentives of Alive and Calm is going to make people want to continually get into the system itself, which from there means obviously the prices stay up, right? The entire ecosystem itself stays up because there are more people who are actively staying in it. And ultimately, when you think about the economic energy of human beings, where it is we're going to throw our money and just have it sit there, that's how we incentivize people to have it sit.
Yep. You can incentivize them through like their end payouts and their end commitment when their stake matures, like that's out there and that's got a value to it. And so if that's appreciating over time, they're going to want to continue to talk about it with people to get more people interested in it. And they're like, dude, I'll literally pay you to get in. And what they're saying is they're buying the Alive price up on occasion to help keep that rebate elevated because it's in their best interest to do so. And so, if the Axis price is getting bought up and then a guy comes in and adopts, so this is the Axis price here. If Axis is going up in price because people keep buying it and then they're committing it for Alive, and then the Alive price is chasing Axis, and then the guy dumps the start payout, there's a delta between where the Axis price is sitting and where the Alive price got dumped to, where, okay, right here it was at, let's say, 50% rebate, but then the guy dumps it and it goes down to like a 20% rebate. Well, now you can get burned Axis at a discount because this delta is bigger, but Axis is still going up. Well, then you could come in behind this guy, buy that guy's supply. The market maker could buy that supply, and then now you're back to 50%. Now the next guy comes in and buys some Axis too, and then this guy, and then they kind of like oscillate. And effectively, what you're going to get is you're going to get two token prices that kind of gradually go up and have this like delta between them, and then the arbitrage comes where the token prices diverge. So like if an Axis gets dumped right here hard, well, the instant rebate just went up because the difference between this and this is now smaller. So now you're getting more a dollar value per your Axis commit because you can get Axis at a better price now from the market. So that's what makes this delta smaller, which makes it you can get a better rebate. So the rebates change basically, and this is important, and it'll take a long time in thinking, but the rebates change based on if Axis goes up and Alive stays flat, rebates going down. If Axis is going down and Alive is staying flat, rebates are going up. If Axis and Alive are going up at the same rate, the rebate stays consistent. Or if they're going down at the same rate, the rebate stays consistent. It's only when you see divergence away from the ultimate change in rebate would come when one is going in one direction and one is going in the other direction. But remember that they're going to be bonded together. So the chances of them diverging for a long period of time is slim. They'll always try to snap back to some sort of equilibrium. And that's where the free market's going to find the average instant rebate that can onboard the most number of users with the least amount of liabilities into the system.
You know what's hilarious right now is that my literal next question for you is actually the self-balancing mechanism and how does that work? And here we are talking about it already without me even needing to ask.
Amazing. And so then I guess we could go back into the web, right? And that's what I have up for you here. Which
yes, I was about to ask, what is this?
So this is Hex, and this is a $50 million web right now, all the Hex liquidity on the chain. And then this is Calm down here with, well, I got to zoom in to see. How big is Calm here? 210K here. Oh, there we go. 336,000 bucks on Calm. And then Axis has 1.6 mil. And so if you add Alive into this equation, well, you're going to start reducing the Axis market cap unless the price goes up, because you're deleting Axis out of the supply, but you're minting Alive proportionally. So
it's literally like one gets bigger, the other one is shrinking, you know?
Yeah, just like this. Just like this expansion and contraction model. It's trying to explain that kind of reflexivity of, as Axis is committed, it gets smaller in amount. Alive gets minted, but the market cap, like that doesn't mean that the Axis market cap necessarily has to go down if the price continues to climb like it has in the past. So that's what's interesting, is even though you're inflating this one and you're deflating this one, the whole system appreciates through this process of locking value out into the future.
Yeah, and if we can go back to that web there, something I would like to explain to people is that what you can imagine is that, like with the balloons idea, right? The bigger the balloon, the more it's going to start dragging everything up. Okay, so you can kind of see it, the whole balloons thing right here, like this. It's a really good, it's a good, what do you call that? Site.
Good example of
good visual. That's what it is.
Good visual. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good visual way of what it is I'm talking about here. Right. Because you got these balloons, they're going to go up there. But here's the thing. If you imagine like Axis and then you got Alive over there, and say, Alive is starting off really small versus Axis, which is going to be way bigger. Right. And then slowly Axis starts shrinking and then Alive starts getting bigger. Well, here's the thing. Because of the economic energy that is going to be continually poured in, technically speaking, all these balloons are still growing in size.
That's right.
Okay. And so it will always be growing. It's not like Axis is going to become like one of these small little dots, No, it's going to be, it'll basically be that same size, right? But all of the economic energy that would be going into Axis technically gets moved over into Alive right there, creating a really, really, really big a really big balloon that literally just pulls everything up with it. So it's really interesting visual. I love it.
It's also interesting when you start considering, like, okay, I can take a token, but what do I bond it with? What if I can bond it with itself? That's where Alive comes in. What if you take a token that mints from itself and bonds it to itself? And now these two things can share energy and create a circular loop of energy between them economically, so that they can both continue to grow bigger and bigger at the same time.
What people need to remember is that when it comes to a hot air balloon, how do you make it go up? You add energy into it.
Yeah.
Boom. There we go.
Yep. And that takes time to fill that hot air balloon with hot air. And so that's the part of the compression of the beginning of the launch of the token, is it starts at zero. It's a deflated balloon. And we won't know how big the balloon can get, because this could lead to a big bubble, just like we've seen before with Axis, and I'm not suggesting that's the optimal play, but just naturally Axis has went through bubbles in the past. It's been through 1, 2, 3 bubbles. You could argue it's in its next cycle now. Leading into this. Yeah, look on the log chart, it really shows the bubble. You had the first major blow off top, and then you had a secondary impulse wave. So that was cycle 1. Boom. You could say this was kind of like cycle 2, a retest of the all-time high. But then this was like really what kind of set us apart, was when it did a 10x in a day and then went to 98K. And then we corrected back down after the big drain event. bottomed out, and now we're in the middle of that next uptrend. So it's exciting. Like a lot of people are using deflation as a way of build a mechanic that they're using to build. So like Dragon X does this like really well, where they have like a loop that feeds back into itself to grow the vault, so that has more power in the system, and that's pretty cool. I mean, but it all hinges on this deflationary component. But what I think what we've done really well, and I think Titan X is always inflationary too, but it requires ETH for energy. But this one, it's always expanding it based on as long as there's access to be committed. And so I don't know. What else you got for questions? I don't want to overstep into some stuff I may or may shouldn't say.
Don't worry about that on this show. It's just fine. The entire idea for this show is for people to learn. So if it's viable, if it's something that my viewers here are going to be able to learn something new off of, absolutely say it if you can.
Well, let's roll it back a sec and just talk about short-term commitments in the system and why that might not be viable, or when it might be viable. So like if I switch this to 1,000 days, look at how that changes the instant rebate. It's because you're getting less units, because remember, units is calculated by number of burned times number of days.
And so, yeah, and the amount of days that you're committing to will give you more of that initial payout of Alive. And that's kind of like your incentive to go longer. Yeah.
So this is what freaks me out about the system a little bit, and it's a very big word of caution, as like, the guy that goes for 1,000 days still has to burn the same amount of economic energy as the guy that burns for 8 years or that burns for a day. Everyone's held to the same standard.
Mm-hmm.
But you're taking a huge risk getting only 98 tokens from your start payout and 408 tokens from your end payout than if you go max length, which you're basically tripling your payout. But you have to still commit the same 0.5 axis in this example.
Yeah, and that's psychologically, if anybody actually looks at that, is going to make them think, hey, why would I not just lock up this axis token that's going to be going up anyways and get as much alive
as you can?
Yeah. And then that's going to be the thing too, that, I mean, we'll just say it here. That's going to be the thing that people want to dump, because obviously people want to take profits, and they will end up doing that. However, just like what you were saying, right? People start, dumping Alive. Well, that means that the rebates go up on Axis. And so people start, staking longer.
Yeah. So if the system, it gets to a point where the rebate is higher than 88%, let's say it gets to 105% or something,
that'd be wild.
Somebody's going to come in there and going to buy some Axis. And when they buy that Axis, it's going to push the Axis price up, which is going to move that rebate down below 100%, because the Axis price just went up against the Alive price,
mm-hmm.
At least momentarily. So then that's going to push that instant rebate down a little bit. So in the very act of them buying, they're kind of pushing the rebate down just a smidge, because Axis and Alive will be heavily bonded, so they will move up and down together. But then, so then they would come in and they would get their, all of their money back from the Alive payout, probably dump it, right? Which would push the instant rebate back down, and give an opening for somebody to buy that burned Axis for a cheaper price. So it's basically a way to flush out and get in, like, because eventually the amount of Axis on market that's going to be able for purchase is going to dwindle down to like single digit numbers of coins, because most of the Axis will have gotten pushed through already. And the Alive, you'd assume that it got picked up by believers in the system that's watching their Axis price go to the moon, even if Alive is having a hard time keeping up. But because of their bonding, they're going to ride up and down somewhat together.
Yeah, those balloons are going to be pulling each other up. Yep. Absolutely.
So again, going short, 100 days, like you're getting 10 coins. For burning $5,500, you'd only get $330 back now. So yeah, you don't want to go short on the system. You want to go, I would say, longer than 5 years. So if you start getting into like 2,000 days, that's 60% at current price on testnet. That this will change based on the price of Alive and Axis. So this chart button will take you out to Deck Screener to show you the axisalive ratio chart, so that'll be available all the time. That's important, I think, because there will be ratio traders who won't need to look at this. This is more for people off the street, because ultimately the game really boils down to the ratio. And so ratio trading will become the skill, and providing LP will become the passive income source between these two coins.
Yeah. All right. So, because it's ecosystem, it emphasizes, the free market floating rebate, right? How does the mechanic prevent the gaming of the system by using like with extreme advanced users or like bots?
Well, I mean, you could have a bot set up to buy Axis whenever the instant rebate hit a certain percent, and then it would buy it, commit it, and dump the Alive for profit. That if you had a certain percentage, I'm sure somebody will do that, but Axis already wins because Axis got burned in the process and committed for some amount of time.
So for Axis holders, it's like, yay, that's a good thing. You have a bot doing that.
Yes, because the Axis holders always win in the system. That's right. It's why it's interesting. It's going to be a bit of a game of chicken and the egg to see who wants to commit first and how much they're willing to commit. And if a few of the bigger players decide to commit in a big way, that could start a chain reaction of commitments. I don't know what's going to happen with that, but that brings us to like the stats page and the importance of that stats page, which is pretty amazing. I think it's the most transparent like data set available. And
yeah, I was looking at this earlier, and I love it. The whole front end looks good, clean.
Thanks, dude. My team's done a lot of hard work on this and designing it and making it useful. But yeah, you can click any top player that's a dolphin or bigger, which I think is like around 220 addresses, and dive into their core holdings, their solid index holdings, and then you get to see all their Axis and Alive data just by switching between these two buttons. So it's pretty cool. And then all their LP positions are listed down here. So we call this the whale watch panel, and then the portfolio viewer on the left. So whale watch is like, where you're digging through guys' addresses. You can click out to DBank, check a guy's positions out, or just click the icon, and you just get their little quick pull up of their their LP positions, what they're paired with, what decks it's on. It's able to view V3, V2 positions. We got all the LP positions right here. First, you can click down through and see what's on market. It's pretty amazing.
Excellent. Alrighty, so I'm going to quickly move over to we have some new faces in the chat, and I feel like I should be shouting you guys out a little bit because you're here watching, getting all of this valuable information, which I'll tell you what, Axis is dropping some freaking alpha on you guys. It's crazy. So with that being said, let's go ahead and Mr. Sojourner, yo, what's up? And then we have Hex Mining Hodler. Always enjoy an Axis analysis. I would have to agree. It's pretty impressive. And then Firestarter with, I don't know, it looks like he's starting fires personally, but hell yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And then Funk Master Hex, fellas with Forever and Ever. I am going to cheers you with my water over here. Alrighty. Now, with that being said, so let's go ahead and well, it looks like you pulled up something else here.
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna move on to a different topic.
Okay.
However, you're pulling up.
This is the bottom of the stats page. It's a cool like bunch of charts where you can view all the data in the system.
Oh, okay.
So I'll pull up the Alive and Axis price. So Alive price is in gold, Axis price is in blue, and the rebate is in green. So what do you notice here is under conditions where Alive stays constant at whatever price it's at, and Axis is increasing in price, the rebate changes, right? The rebate is inversely proportional. Now, if they are going up and down at the same rate, so let's just assume that I'll remove the Alive price for a second, just to make sure that this is clear. If Alive was doing this and doing the exact same thing as Axis was doing, well, then this instant rebate would just be like a flat line because they'd be the same distance between each other at all times.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be inefficiencies in the market where, Alive may go up really fast in the beginning and then crash. And then it may, peter off and then build up over time. And then all of a sudden it gets in a premium, kind of like the perpetuals get sometimes. And then eventually they'll find stabilization. And I don't know what's going to happen. But my point is that this instant rebate will adjust based on the relationship. So when the yellow line is over the blue, that's implying that the premium is above 100% rebate. Like you're talking like it could be hundreds or thousands of percent rebate. And so that would be a period of time where there was a super shortage of a live supply on market and people were just running up the price for the sake of it. Just maybe as a marketing gimmick, and who knows what kind of situation that would cause.
Yeah, and so the interesting thing about that then is what you'd be watching really closely is the difference between the access price and the rebate itself. You actually really wouldn't care too much about the Alive price because if the rebate, goes way underneath access and access is really expensive, that's when you'd want to start selling access. Or you could lock it up and then get a bunch of the Alive out, and that right there is going to allow you to basically dump it. But then that would spike the price of the rebate. And then once the rebate goes up higher than the price of access, that's when you would want to buy into the access.
You're literally describing this period right here. And what was going on here, I'll just read you the variable. So when access was at 22,000, the rebate was at 100%. When access dropped to 19,000, the rebate went to 118%. And when it went, when access got back up to 22,000, the rebate got back to 100%. And this is because a live price is stable at, in this example, $79. So yeah, this is going to be the place to go to check and see. You could just honestly commit based on whatever the rebate is. You get the Alive, you dump it from where access, or you put it in a farm somewhere to earn yield, or some other thing that might come in the future. So that's definitely going to be data you're going to want to look. You can look at access amount burned. There will be an inflation chart for both access and Alive over time. So you'll be able to see the supply over time. You get to see commitments that have started, ended, early ended, start payouts, end payouts, early ended. It's all the data will be here for you Giga nerds that want to know how the system's working and why it's doing what it's doing.
Yeah, so this is where traders can basically leverage all of this in the Access Alive ecosystem for arbitrage opportunities. However, because of the way that the rebates work, they will not be disrupting the market's integrity at all. So
I don't think so. I think that we have some plans for LP pools that should protect the LP pools too, that I have not talked about yet. But another cool little feature, little Easter egg, is if you click on these are your balances up here. If you click on the number in dollars on dollar value, you can actually pull up the pulse value. So if you value your account in pulse terms, you can just click that and it'll just give you how much it's worth in pulse.
So I'm going to tell you why that's really neat. Okay. Something that everybody in the audience needs to kind of understand here is that the majority of everything that we ever look at is a ratio with the dollar. Okay. If you go to the supermarket, you're going to ratio how many dollars is the milk, right? Is it expensive or is it cheap? So those are ratios that we use our entire life. Okay. Now people are struggling right now to try and figure out how to ratio two coins together, because technically speaking, it's the same thing. If you imagined Bitcoin, or let's go with Ethereum, right? Because we're all used to Ethereum over here on Pulsechain. If you use Ethereum as your base coin, all right, your base currency, then what you'd want to do is you'd want to see, okay, how many pulse can I get for 1 Ethereum? Okay, is pulse expensive or is it cheap right now? People still have not quite understood that yet, that you can start making a baseline on something cheap versus expensive based on the coins, right? Now, right now with the core 4, you know, people are doing a really good job with at least on Pulsechain. I don't know about other chains, but hey, you guys here on Pulsechain, you're doing a pretty good job at looking at the difference between like where Hex and Pulse is at. Which one's more expensive, you know? Yeah, right there. So it's kind of like, all right, this here has helped me a lot when it comes to like farming and LPing, because as soon as you start seeing this, right, where Hex is just taking off versus Pulse, I don't want to be in an LP because that's where the impermanent loss happens, because the Hex keeps switching over to Pulse now, right? So if I pull it out, I have technically bought more Pulse. I've sold the Hex for more Pulse technically, right? But I just wanted to bring that up for everybody to think about. Okay, so when you're looking at things in dollar amounts, you're like, okay, this is how many dollars I can get. But when you switch that little button over to Pulse, it's like, okay, how much Pulse can I get now? All right, how much Ethereum could I get? Right. When you start looking at the ratios, like what Axis has here, that's where you're like, hey, if I were to sell my Pulse, because and I've actually done this many times, guys. Okay, because it's like, oh no, Pulse isn't really going up, but Hex is. I want to go get into the faster horse, right? So you think about, hey, I'm going to sell my Pulse bag into Hex. Well, okay, here's the problem with that. As soon as you go to do that, that's what you're buying. Okay, you're buying an expensive Hex comparative to Pulse, right? Your Pulse is still very inexpensive. Now, if you were to look at if you're going to put dollars in, obviously you want to look at the dollar ratio, right? However, if you start trying to swap coins around, like, hey, I think I'm going to move my Hex over to Pulse, it's probably a pretty good time considering that it's going way up like that, right? Pulse is a lot cheaper. But yeah, a little tangent. I just wanted everybody to kind of try and get that through your head about, hey, things are starting to change now in the crypto world where it's no longer about dollars, but it's about coins. Anyways, let's continue.
Yep. The ratio trading has been a part of crypto for a long time, but I think it got lost on people from the first class of people back in 2000 and maybe 14, 15, 16 that was ratio trading, like XRP and Sia Coin with Bitcoin and stuff. And so it got lost in the sauce during ICO mania and just the euphoria. And but now it's kind of resurfaced again. And you hear like Ben Cohen and some of the big thought leaders talk about viewing your portfolio in Bitcoin terms and like how many Satoshis is your portfolio worth, or like how much ETH is your portfolio worth. Like those are good measures of, if you're earning more Bitcoin or ETH every day, you're really beating inflation at that point. And so I think Pulse is like a good measure of like a money market, that if you're beating Pulse, you're doing a good job. And that's why I'm so proud of the Axis price, up this much against Pulse over the couple of years, almost 2 years it's been out now. So, it's up 41x against Pulse. And, that's just from the September breakout. So you go back to the beginning, it started at virtually zero, and those numbers get ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, like, look, since September of last year, it's given you 102x versus 103.5x versus Pulse, which is something to be proud of. So, and then you can ratio trade inside of here too. Although I think like long term, you just want to, if this is going to be like the Berkshire Hathaway of Pulsechain, you just want to have exposure to it, as because it's going to continue to be the most transparent coin out there. And now it's getting some new boots.
Absolutely. All right, so I want to kind of move over here to something a little bit different. So how would a laddering strategy work in practical terms for long-term Axis holders, and what benefits does it provide?
That's a good question. I think long-term commitments are pretty much the way to go to start. So you're either going to commit near max length, or you're going to buy alive when it's super cheap. someone comes in and nukes a bag, you're going to want to come in and buy that up. I don't really think in the beginning there's going to be a legitimate ladder strategy that goes less than halfway, like less than 4 years. Being said it's an 8-year commitment. I mean, because of how you're, no matter what, you're held to the same amount, a standard amount of burned amount of access, and you're just getting less alive the less time you commit. So what that might look like is, like, if I had one coin to commit, you might put like a half a coin out for max length, 0.4 of a coin out for 5 years or 7 years, and then maybe or like some percentage less of the coin coming backwards to the closer to the year 4, basically. So you might put 0.5 out there on year 8, 0.3 out there on year 7, 0.2 on year 6, and 0.1 on year 5. And so that way you're not taking as big of a hit on the burn amount as you ladder back, because you're already going to lose hard on the days. For example, like 0.5 for 8 years is 153 plus 600. It's like 750. But versus if I go, let's say 2000 days, now I'm only getting 500. So I'm 150 less. But if I reduce my exposure to like 0.3 for 2000 days, yeah, I'm getting less units, but I'm also going for less time. So I still have 2.2 extra units that I could maybe ratio trade with, pair it with an LP, do other things with it. I think the system inherently makes you have to have a little bit of both coins to play the game effectively. And so buying it is just as effective of a strategy. It's kind of like, again, a game of chicken, where it's like, you kind of want everyone else to go in and commit, and then you just buy up the coins when they dump them, because you're brute forcing adoption through that instant rebate by doing so. And now you get to hold all your access still. But I think the one way that I like is the same way that I think about Hex, which is you ladder out on every year around the same time. You ladder out for the next year, maybe twice a year you go for the max length commitment. So if you had like 0.1 coin, you do 0.1 or some amount this year, max length, and then next year at this time of year you go again max length. And so that every year after year 8 you have a max length commitment coming off, and you're getting the most alive that you could have got.
So I don't know why, but I was thinking, like, what'd be funny is if you just put like, 0.1 of the coin just starting from 1 year and just moving it backwards, and there you go. That'd be pretty funny. Or like every 50
From
days,
year 1,
that's 60 days. Yeah, from year 8, and then you just start moving it backwards like every 60 days or every 90 days.
Yeah. That's a valid strategy too, right? I guess it's not. Yeah, it almost makes, because there's no gas problem with this token. The way that it was coded, it calculates gas on the day that the commitment ends, and it doesn't have to calculate every single day to figure out the payout. So yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. And yeah, if you have one coin, maybe every quarter you do an 8-year or something.
You get my quarterly payout.
Yeah, your quarterly max length payout.
There you go. Eventually you'll get to it, right? I suppose the same sort of thing it happens with hex stakes as well, though, where you stake it out 15 years and 14 years. It's like, I get my yearly payout of hex, which, by the way, what I did do that, and it comes out on my birthday. So that's
nice.
It's like you give yourself a present, every single time the hex stake comes out, you're like, hey, there's my present.
Yeah, a lot of people do it around birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, that sort of stuff. It's pretty cool. Like it makes it a little bit more like near and dear to, more personalized,
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, it's the dopamine that happens is when you unstake and all that, right? It makes you very happy, and so hex is always going to make you happier on your most important day for you, or should be, one of your most important days, right? And so, yeah, it's a really good reward system, truthfully.
That's right. Yeah, and it it's also a way to protect yourself from yourself. Like if
Mm.
like if you have the problem of holding on to a coin because you don't, whatever, this is a way to lock some away from yourself. And if the instant rebate's good enough, there's almost no reason not to do it, because if the instant rebate is 88%, you could dump that alive for your axis position back, at least a half, more than half you burned. And now it's scot-free. That's why I think the instant rebate will be more north or south of 50%, because at 50%, you're getting your half of your burned amount back from the start payout.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things. Like when you showed me how much instant rebate you get with the Alive, my first thought is like, oh hell yeah, I'm just gonna go commit all of my all of my access, longest you could go, because technically your rebate, you get most of that back almost instantly.
Depends on the Alive price, so be careful, because this can change based on if Alive's going up or down. Especially in the first few days, it could be really volatile, and you only lock in that rebate if you sell. Like if you hold the Alive, that instant rebate doesn't mean anything to you.
And that's going to be a hell of a game, by the way, too. As soon as you launch it, there's going to be a lot of people playing that game.
That's right. I'm a little bit concerned for people, but hopefully most people just chill and
hold it. Wait,
look, because if the market wants to dump the Alive price down to like 3% coupon rate, I'm not going to say anything. Like, look, there's a class of guys that has a lot of access that it's in their best interest to take it all from you.
Oh man, that dude, I've seen some launches where it's just crazy price volatility, and I swear this is gonna do it. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
I think this is gonna be pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch it go, like if you got in, if you get your commitment in, and then the Alive price spikes up like 3x. Forget what the rebate was when you got in. Like if it spikes up 3x, like you could immediately sell your Alive, and then if it drops by 50%, you could buy back so much more coins. It's like that volatility in the first opening, 72 hours could be pretty insane.
Yeah, when it comes to volatility, things like that. So you remember GIF, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was the ICOS, I think it was iBurn, if I remember properly. On stream, on the Degen Roundtable stream, I made 10 million pulse just by burning the pulse and going through that system. That's how volatile it was.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And it was funny because we legit interrupted the stream because we were about to start, and I'm like, guys, I found something here, and we literally started the stream, and we didn't even start what we had planned. We just put my screen up there, and I was just clicking the button as fast as possible. Oh man.
My hope is that we get a bunch of people in there that buys Axis for the first time and they commit, and they're going to have their feelings about it, on the first month, and then the 6th month, and then the first year. And hopefully by the end of the first year, they're like, wow, that was crazy how big my end payout looks right now. Yeah, because those end payouts, like, they could be pretty impressive. Because you think about it, what's happening here, I'll just use the one coin example. You're injecting, in this example, 11 grand, but it's printing 50 grand of value, because 40 grand is in the end payout and 10 grand is in the start payout. So you're basically locking away 11 grand worth of value, and you're printing 50 grand of value out of thin air.
Mm-hmm.
And then keep in mind that half that 11 grand comes back to you in the end. And that's at the Alive price of around, like, whatever it's at on here. Like, I think it's like $80 or something is what it's at. So like, you got to wonder, like, well, how can you print something out of thin air with such high? Well, the price will fluctuate. And that's like the thing is, like, these dollar numbers, they're going to fluctuate a lot. And I don't want people to think that that's, an expectation or anything, because it's not. It's just, that's what it's at current rate. based on current estimates. So that instant rebate, that these ROI projections like 808%, that can all change a lot over time. But if the system's successful, it's going to lock in so much value and create so much adoption that the TVLs on the liquidity pools is going to explode. And there will be a lot of money to be made ratio trading and putting liquidity into the system to make it thicker and bigger and bigger. We're seeing this with TitanX and DragonX, where like there's like millions of dollars a day in volume between DragonX and TitanX, and one mints the other one. So it's not like it hasn't been done before. This is a new approach on it, and but what it can create for us is a lot more volume and a lot more money making opportunities.
Absolutely. One of the things too, I would like to point out is, remember guys, when I was talking about the ratios of like dollars and coins, this is the same sort of deal, right? Because remember when Axis is like, hey, it depends on the volatility of the price of Alive. So when you're going to actually mint out stuff, right, or mint out Alive, it's not necessarily the dollar amount you want to look at. It's actually the coins you want to look at. How many coins you're going to get, aka the ratio, or not the ratio, sorry, the rebate, right? And that's actually, this kind of goes back to what a bull market versus a bear market strategy, right? Which in a bear market, it's about how many coins can I get. It's not about the dollar amount. You don't look at the dollar amount. You just look at trying to get the most amount of coins you can get, right? Whereas in a bull market, that's when you start looking at, okay, what's the dollars now? What's the how many dollars am I getting for my coins? That's when you start looking at that. Right. And we're kind of at that point right now. However, because we're at that point right now, how do you think this whole system is going to work in the next bear market versus like how you think it's going to be working in this bull market?
Yeah, in the bull market, it's gonna the price gains on Pulse is going to amplify the dollar prices of Alive and Axis. So, if Pulse is going to go to a 10x over like 3-month window of time, these dollar prices on Axis and Alive are going to go up every day. And so if that's happening, it's going to onboard a lot of people into the system. Now in the bear market, it remains to be seen what happens. If a few of these big ass whales nuke their positions or sell off big bags, that could start off a big sell off, which could lead to a normal correction. Like we've seen 80% drops in Axis in history. 4 of them always made new all-time highs against Pulse. So there's no concern there really so much, because remember that there's going to be a capped community supply that just decreases of Axis. So it just gets more and more deleted and scarce. And so there is a floor level that will be hit. And then it's just a matter of, we kind of performed in a bear market already. So we've seen Axis perform when we were in a bear market with Pulse, and what it did is it went up against Pulse and increased your Pulse position. So I would expect that for the first bear market, which will be between years like 3 and 7, let's say, those 7 and 8 year big commitments aren't really going to come off yet. Those will be coming off in the start of the next bull if it's a regular typical 4-year cycle. It's launching on an election year, on a Bitcoin halving year. And so that's kind of key. Those are 2 key things about the system, is that people committing this year on launch are committing on that key time that's got global importance. And so, I think, that going into this bear, there's a chance that depending on how brutal the bear is and how much these whales need to take profit out of the system, it really depends on how hard this chart gets hit. Right now, it's doing a pretty damn good job of holding up and creating higher highs and higher lows against Pulse. And I think the Axis Alive system does a damn good job of locking away a lot of that market cap for the next bear market, so that 80%-ish of Alive end payouts is pushed out. The half the Axis is pushed out. All you're going to have left circulating is this small pot of Alive, the circulating, which was the 20% or less, and then whatever Axis remains circulating in the community supply. So there will be less. It'll be scarce. Both tokens should be more scarce throughout this next bear, which should bode better for kind of hopefully creating higher price floors, even in that kind of an environment. That's my speculation, so don't hold me to it, but That's my optimism around pushing off all of that capital on the back end.
Yeah, one of the things to note is that, I mean, even though like Bitcoin has been in a technical bull, right? Pulsechain, like the Pulsechain network, just the coins on there, has been still in a bear. We're only just now starting to get into our so-called bull, right? So your coin has actually been something of a
hedge.
Yeah, hedge against the bear, right? Go figure that one. And it's done really well as a store of value. So yeah, I do think, especially when you start burning off these coins, that a lot of these whales are not necessarily going to be dumping a lot. That is my theory. I do believe they will see. I mean, it's kind of like Bitcoin, right? Like people will dump Bitcoin for sure. But when you look at, like, say, Hex ended up going down 99%, right? And then you had Bitcoin only going down, what was it? It was at 70 or like 65%, right? From the last top. Well, I mean, people believed that the store of value at that particular time was in Bitcoin, and these are the big players, right? So I believe we're going to have the same type of effect, especially in Hex. I believe it's going to, with everything being built around it, I think it's going to become more of a store of value. But these things need to mature. And if you think about it, like if you look back at the first 2 cycles of Bitcoin, it was wild, right? And that's 8 years, guys. Okay, what are we in, like, year 3 of Pulsechain right now?
Well, we're in our second official year after launch.
Only a second. Yep.
It's launched May of last year, so next May will be 2 years. We'll be in that 3rd year next May, which is pretty amazing. Like, and I brought up the Bitcoin chart for just to prove your point of how crazy the beginning was. And I mean, this is just like mad gains, right? There's only like, maybe like 10,000, 50,000 people into Bitcoin back here. Like
That's wild.
tiny little market. That's how Pulsechain is now. You got like maybe like 15, 20,000 people that actually actively trade it. And then, it's through these massive price hikes is where you get the interest of the world. And it takes basically, so I think we're, us and some of these other communities, like the aliens community, the Greys, and like the Atropa and PDI community, and like they're setting their foundations up too at the same time. So I think your comments is totally justified and warranted, that we're just building the city out right now, and we're positioning ourselves for success.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that, I mean, to go back to the city, like I've been saying, and I'll continue to repeat it, is it started off with a single building, a single shack on a piece of land. And that building's name was Hex, right? And then all of a sudden, a bunch of construction builders came in and said, you know what, I think we can make more than just this shack, right? And it started with Richard Hart literally walking in and going and just starting to hammer away at Pulsechain, right? And then everybody else kind of followed him, as like, I'm going to make this one now, this one over here, and then we're going to connect this one, we're going to add a new floor to Hex, and it's going to go up. And it's like everything that's being built right now it's a literal city that's being built out. And think about this way, guys, when you do build a city, do you just build the buildings, or do you need the infrastructure to be able to build on them, right? So like the sewer systems, electrical systems, things like that, you have to build that stuff out. Well, if you haven't built that out in a city, your city's going to kind of suck. And that's, I think, for the bear that Pulsechain has been in for so long, is us literally building out those systems. Because when you build out a city, the city isn't beautiful and amazing and just awesome and everybody wants to move to it, when it's just people, building electrical systems, right? It's like, hey, that still has crappy buildings over there, so I'm not going to move there yet. Well, as soon as we have built those out, and then the buildings start becoming, becoming good living places, right? And once everything gets built out, that's when people want to move in. And I think so far we've done a very good job building out and trying to do it quickly too. By the way, the amount of projects that came out that was actually going to help Pulsechain overall is kind of insane, frankly. That's tons of building here, and everyone's doing a great job at it. And so, because we've been so fast, this bull market that is about to take off here is going to cause people to be like, holy crap, this city is actually really awesome. There's going to be a lot of people who move in here because of that, Now, I don't know what Bitcoin's going to do. There's a possibility that the next bear market is not going to be like a normal bear market, and how we could possibly just kind of continue to slowly move up, right? And I do, maybe there's a little bit of a suspicion too that, you know, Richard Hart uses the funds to moreover kind of just keep Pulsechain from, you know, the Pulsechain coins, the core four, from actually dumping hardcore and be more like a Tron chart, right? I do think that that's a real possibility. But regardless of that, the point is we want to get people to move to our city. We're taking a bet on our city, right? And that's the reason why you guys are here. That's the reason why you're buying into these coins, these projects, right? The Grays, they did something amazing over there with the Grays, right? What you're making here with Alive is absolutely fantastic. I just
Thank you.
So yeah, my props for you.
Definitely give props to my team too, and also I'm really enthusiastic when I find somebody that, like yourself, that's super interested in the game theory and like wants to participate. Because you kind of came to that conclusion on your own. It wasn't something that I begged you to do or paid you to do. It was just kind of like you were curious. You're just curious about the city that's being built, and this is just one of the ones you landed on, which is so awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I originally started over in Phantom, and Phantom was really cool because you had a lot of builders there, a lot of nerds, right? And it's fast, and it was a lot of fun, you know, the whole spooky thing going on. I was like, oh, this is epic and cool. And then also my main thing, because I work a lot, right? I don't have a lot of time to be sitting here looking at charts and stuff like that. So for me, it's always been about building money printers, yielding farms, and all that. So yeah, Phantom had a lot of that, but as soon as Pulsechain came out, I was like, whoa, there's a lot of really good stuff being built out over here. And yeah, so that was pretty epic for me to be able to get into a place where there's a lot of what I like, right? Not only that too, but the vibrant community here, along with like all the I always like calling on my colors and stuff like that. Because if you go to any of the protocols, it's always just like really eye-catching, you know, eye-popping, right? And that is something that I think people misunderstand. You know, if you get somebody who's newer to crypto like me, I lost all my money and gave up in 2021, came back in at the very end of 2022. And when you start seeing something like Pulsechain pop up, you're like, wow, this is very vibrant. It's good looking. There's a lot of stuff happening here. I think I will want to stay here, right? And that's the reason why I did stay. I stayed, and not only did I stay, but I started kind of shouting to the high heavens myself. You know, I'm telling other people about it. It's because it has treated me well. So yeah, it's just that. But talking about farms and all that, I hear that possibly there's going to be farms. So for any kind of yield farmer like me, how do the proposed pools, you know, like time-based, the time warp, and the hyper deflation enhance their strategies while promoting the ecosystem stability?
So yeah, so we've thought about, you know, how can you give people something to actually get into. So the first experiment for us was by making the two salad pool on 2FUCks. And that was cool because it showed us that you could bond a lot of tokens together and create a pretty fluid Hart's law component. And the way we did it with that one was we heavily weighted the incentive token. And so what ended up happening was it was like over $500,000 of value was in that pool, and it got up to like anywhere from 50, it was like around like 50% to 70% APR at any given time. And right now it's at 100% APR. But what ended up happening was like almost 10% of all of the 2FUCK supply is sitting locked in that pool right now, which is important. It's like pretty crazy if you think about it, that 10% of all of the entire max 2FUCK supply is sitting in that pool. It's like 8% right now. And so what that does is it sets up nicely for like a huge supply squeeze coming off these off this bottom, because like if the liquidity providers are loving the yield, and the market makers want to take that supply off the market, both people are getting made whole, and they're reversing any impermanent loss that they may have gotten on this downside. So it's very interesting, like how much supply that pool soaked up, with 33% of the pool being just the 2FUCK token, and then the other ones being spread out. But one of the challenges with that one was that there was coins in there that like somebody might not like, or that there was just too many coins in one pool. And so it made it difficult to capture enough of all of the different tokens to go into that pool. And
yeah,
so
I can say that if you don't, one of the issues with having so many different coins in like one pool is that means that everybody has to buy all those coins. And maybe there's one coin and there you're like, I don't really want to touch that one. I really don't care about that one. It's like, okay, well now you're in trouble here, you know?
So when we went to designing the axisalive pools, we designed them for simplicity so that it's just like 2 or 3 tokens in a pool. And that's important because there's obviously Axis and Alive, which is 2 tokens, which on their own right should just be bonded together, and you should get paid a lot of money to bond them together because that's what benefits the system. But then there, in other cases, there should be like a big, huge, PLS pool there that's protected from downside risk. And so that's where we came in with the time-based pool, which you guys will learn more about when I'm ready to actually fully reveal it. And then with the com pool, there's a debate going around with, for example, like, do you bond Alive to com? And if you do, what could you add in there to just make it a little bit stickier? Is it hex maybe? Or is it, what else could you put in there that would make sense and what proportion? So Alive and com on their own are going to have a pool on PulseX, but to make it even a little bit stickier, there's a chance that we could bond it with something else to make it, to give people like a more direct route into Alive and com. And I think hex would be a good conduit for energy. Maybe it's, maybe it's something else. I know for thinking about Axis as deflationary and Alive as expansionary, it'd be cool to add another deflationary component like PulseX. So like, that could be another type of pool with Axis Alive and PulseX to put like 2 deflationary pressures on an expansionary supply over time, which would effectively just drag the price of Alive up if Alive can't get up on its own. So there's definitely a lot of thought that went into those. And we're basically taking all of our learnings about supply and demand and solving for that to help the system automatically appreciate due to the mechanics of the tokens that are in the pairings.
Excellent. So I can tell you right now that a really cool strategy for me, right? Just kind of thinking off the cuff, would be to take my Axis, max it out, burn half of it, and then get that Alive. And then from the Alive, I can then take my bag of com and I can put it in a pool together. And now I've got a pool that will sit there for quite a long time, by the way. So that would be.
You think that Alive and com are enough, right? Like you don't need a third token. Because I kind of feel like these 2 token pairs might be the way. Or if you do put something else in there, it just needs to be like 10%.
Yeah, I was gonna say it should probably be pretty small. So what would it be? I would say, like 50-50 or perhaps just a little bit more Alive than com. But I mean, you do want to incentivize people. So yeah, probably 50-50 is going to be your best way, Alive and com. And then just like a good 5-10% of say hex, right? There you go. And this whole idea was stemmed from hex, so obviously that's also something you kind of honor hex in that sort of way.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think so. It gives a direct route from Axis Alive to hex, and it doesn't have to be a lot to make a route. So yep, I think that's kind of our basic plan. There'll be more that'll be announced. There's a pool in there that I didn't go into specifics about that I don't think I've ever seen done at that and those ratios before, and it's gonna shock people, I think.
Oh boy, I'm looking forward to that one. Actually, that sounds dangerous. What the hell, man?
It's a defensive pool that's going to be just a massive pool that's going to be like super defensive for the LP provider, and hopefully it'll pay them to stay in there. Because the thing is, like, if with any of these pools, they have to pay more than a pulse validator. So they have to pay more than 10%, or they have to pay more than a short-term hex stake, so like 15%. Because if you come in over that, then you give people a productive place to put their hex or their pulse other than hex staking or validating.
Okay, so wait a minute here. So I wonder if you could combine it possibly with the HTT token from Actuator, because Actuator does a really good job at staking your hex, pulling those coins out so that way they're liquid, in which then which means, to stake your hex 5555 is like worry free basically. And then possibly be able to put that into a pool of, say, alive. So that way people will want to commit their axis, get that alive, and then they could stick it in there as well. And so you literally have a forever, what would you call that? A flywheel of people are always going to be committing time, right? Time locks on both hex and axis, causing these balloons to be the biggest balloons, lifting everything up. And the reason why they want to do that is because they want to pull out, they want to pull out the HTT as well as the alive tokens to be able to pair. So that way they have themselves another token that they can literally live on,
So you'd bond alive to HTT, or you'd bond it to actuator?
You would bond it to HTT. Yeah. Because if it was just actuator, actuator is just kind of like a sort of an incentive token on their side of things, versus the HTT itself is going to be is the safety net of like, hey, like it's making me want to literally just take all my hex and yeet it all into a 15 year stake, because I am able to pull a lot of that out,
Do what? And it's based on the length, right? You can pull a certain amount of collateral.
Yes.
Or you could pull a certain amount based on collateral. Does it have to be 150% or anything like that?
150% collateralized. No, it's 1-to-1.
Yeah. So could you pull out the entire value of a hex stake?
I believe so. If I'm remembering correctly, I think you can. If I'm not, somebody could go ahead, correct me. But no, it's up to 70%. So here, if you go all out to 15 years, you're able to pull out. Well, they go by days, but you're able to pull out 30% with the furthest out. Second furthest is like 50%. And then actually the closer ones, you can pull out like 70%. However, you also have to technically pay these back. So the strategy with that is the rewards that you get. You can just, half of it would go into paying back the HTT token, and then the other half you can go buy more hex or something like that, right? In which then you can not only pay off your technical debt or your loan, whatever, with the hex stake, but then you could also buy enough hex to be able to make another stake and then kind of continue it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one of the strategies that I ended up coming up with. However, if you're able to pull those out and continually pull it out, then you can combine it with a bigger flywheel, which would be, Axis and Alive. And then, combine it with Alive, you get your reward token there, whether it's like, Fux or BBC or whatever, whichever one it is, right? Mm-hmm. Then you can just go and start, you can have half of it pay back the HTT, right? While the other little bit, you can either go buy more hex, or you can buy access, you could buy any of these other ones, and then just continually rehypothecate it right back in. So that might be a little high level though.
Yeah, we'll get together and maybe once we get the base pools launched, we'll come back through and do something like that for sure. Because that sounds like a pretty cool way to increase your bag sizes. If it's a 15-year, you have plenty of time to recapture the HTT units, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those always hold 1-to-1 with whatever the price of a hex is. So
correct. Yeah.
So yeah, you should, I guess you got to be a little bit protective, right? You got to be, you can't go like so hard in the paint and spend it all. And if you make a bad play, then your hex stake is trapped, right? And then what?
Yeah, then people can take your can emergency unstake you, or not emergency unstake, but when that time comes to your commitment, the amount of days, and yes, they would be able to emergency unstake you, and that's good for them.
Wow, cool.
Hey, you got it here first, guys. What do you think about it, eh? Tell me if that's not a good idea in the chat, eh? All right, so we got a couple of people who walked in here, so I'm going to go ahead and say hello to you guys again. So we got Chris Corey Gal. Let's go. Love the game theory on one of Pulsechain's most impressive tokens, Axis, for the win. Boom. I agree, man.
Thanks, Chris.
And then Warren Lee, get the likes up, fam. Get the likes up. Yes, what are you doing? Dude, if you thought that whole flywheel that we just, kind of game theoried right there is a cool idea, smash that like button, please, and subscribe and hit the belly button for me.
Yes,
then we got
please do. I appreciate it.
Leveling up my axis and calm in preparation. Hell yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And then, of course, Tin Top. What's up, Hexicans? What is up, Tin Top?
Calm is such a beast, dude. That coin is silly. Like how high it can pump, and against Pulse, it's done like a 700x or something since the start. It's like, what the hell? Such a beast coin. Like, it's probably because it started so cheap, right? It's like it started so god awful cheap, and Hex was down so bad. Wow, just Johnny struck gold there with that one.
All right, so I'm thinking we could go for a few more questions and then possibly exit out after that. Are you good?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Good for another couple minutes. Yeah, let's do it.
Sweet. All right, so how about this then? How do you envision future utility being built on top of Axis and Alive, such as, thorough collateral-backed stable coins or additional DeFi products?
Yeah, dude, that's all possible. And when you start looking at Alive as the collateral, you put constant commitment pressure on Axis, because now you need Alive to serve a function. And so then it gives this expansionary token supply of Alive somewhere to go, right? And but it's safer because you can only mint more of it if there's access available to mint it. So that's going to be the kind of the route that you could take with something like that. So yeah, very perceptive of you to think about that particular use case.
Building the city.
Yep. And there's also people have thought about integrations with like Hex more directly, and rewarding and thinking of ways to reward even just like the eHex holders or like Hexkins, like it's pretty vast. I mean, I don't really think that there's any limit to the possibilities of what you could do with Alive once it's out in the wild, because it's just a PRC20 with scarcity, and it's representing the time value of money, just like Hex, which is what makes Hex so valuable. Except that in this case, it required an actual permanent burn of something to produce it. So I think that's a main component here.
Okay, so how about this then? Is there any type of protocol or some sort of method, or something built on it that you particularly would want? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, you hinted at it already. Stuff that we're thinking about, like where our headspace is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you could use Alive as the collateral to produce more value, stable value. I mean, you can peg something to anything. Like you can peg it to the price of gold. You can peg it to the price of silver. You can peg it to the price of $1. So that part is interesting. So like you could create a stable unit of account based on Alive, which would limit the amount of liabilities, because it would have required somebody to serve a tremendous amount of time to even have enough coin to produce that extended value. And so then it does put more buying commitment pressure on Axis. And I guess that's all I can really say about it. It's a better collateral because it has to be condensed and compressed through time. And it had to take some, and the Axis is so valuable already in price that somebody committed a lot of dollar value in the past to mint that stuff. So it makes even for a more pristine collateral.
Well said. All right. So what does the roadmap for front-end upgrades look like, in particular regarding user experience and analytic tools?
Yep. So we'll launch with the commitments page, and you'll get that first wave of commitments and charts to look at, just on Dex Screener and Dex tools and whatnot. And then in the fall, I would say within the first like 3 days after hopefully sooner, but within the first 3 days, the axisalive stats page will go online, so you can start to dig into all of the players in the ecosystem and watch their movements. And then within a couple weeks after that, I want to have like the leaderboard up and running, and that's like got its own cool little formula for how the leaderboard is, how you get to top spots on the leaderboard. And once you do achieve like top 50, top 30, top 20, top 10, top 3, there's like certain badges that's awarded to your account, and so that's kind of cool. There's a whole badge system and like
You got a whole
leaderboard
badge system. I love it, man. That's great.
And then down the road, we will bring online like the most comprehensive liquidity data package that you've ever seen, which will boil down all of the major liquidity pools across every DEX, and who's in the pools, how much weighted they are in each pool. It's similar to what you've seen with like Look Into Hex, where they did their liquidity page, but taking it a step further than that even, and accounting for V3s and all sorts of cool stuff. So that's kind of the short-term roadmap, and beyond that, we have nothing to announce quite yet.
Excellent, man. You guys have really thought up a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of I kind of feel like it's newer stuff to front ends that you're kind of bringing to the table here, which ultimately, like, I would say everyone else is probably going to start copying, to be frank, which is a good thing. You know, it's a good thing when you get to that point of copying.
So that's a really good topic that you just brought up. Probably one of the really good last questions here is like when you think about, so Steve Jobs said, you start with the user experience first and you build backwards. And so I really took that to heart, and which is why we spent so much time building at the application layer, meaning the front end, what you see. Now, the contract code that runs the math, that pays the inflation, that's all hard locked, immutable, no admin keys, no initial supply, all those buzzwords, right? Forever going to be on the blockchain. But none of that has anything to do with the way that the data is displayed to the end user. That's all running through the app. So the app is the front end. That's the application layer. We're solving for better user experiences. That's the meat of the product. The commitments and the mechanics and the supply and demand and the math is the foundational layer that is super simple, 400 lines of code, rock solid code, audited, and valuable. And but the application layer is what amplifies the experience for everybody, and which makes it. And yes, I totally expect almost every project that's going to be worth a damn is going to borrow some component of what we decide to do for this, what we launch for this. I'm not saying that other projects haven't made leaderboards before, they haven't done, liquidity pages and stuff. They have, but nobody's ever put it all in one comprehensive package like this way before, where the whole system is in one. It's like one suite.
Yeah. So one of the things I would actually like to kind of point this out, just to talk to you, what it is you said there. It's so vitally important to understand what the user experience is, because one of the first things I noticed about Pulsechain was that little MetaMask button, right? Now, why is that so important? Because anywhere else you go back at that time, you didn't have that. You had to go into the token itself, right? Push the 3 buttons, go into the token, find the contract address, and then go put it into your MetaMask from there, right? However, that little MetaMask button did all that for you, and all you had to do was click it and be like, hey, do you want to add this to your wallet? Boom. That was one of those things that immediately stuck out as like, hey, this is different and this is a lot easier. It's more user friendly. I love it.
Yeah.
All right.
I like that, especially with like the example of like the little fox button that automatically brings the emblem into your wallet.
Yep.
Like just stuff like that, little user experience stuff. Like, no, I think like the wallets that are coming out now are like heads and heels above MetaMask and what it was capable of. I know MetaMask is like now playing catch up, but I mean, like there's other wallets out there that are just amazing now that do so much more. I love it.
Yeah, I had KG on here last week, and we were going through his wallet, and that's a dude who's really he's thought about, hey, user experience first, how can we build this to be just the best possible user experience for people when they do get this? And then not only that, but also always displaying it on Pulsechain, and they have to switch over to Ethereum instead, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just hats off to him. He's done absolutely amazing with internet money.
Mm-hmm. They're super. That dude is super passionate about his product and always has the end user in mind. Whether it comes to data collection or the intent behind the time token even is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I anticipate that once the bull market really kicks off, they're going to be doing just fine.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So the white paper outlines strategic liquidity, development styles, or sorry, cycles. So could you expand on how these cycles are designed and their impact on the market stability?
Liquidity cycles. Trying to think about what I meant by that. It could be, well, so as bull markets pick up, there's the phenomenon where like FOMO obviously hits and there's a lot of capital injection, but then what you see at the top of a cycle is like one or two guys takes all of the capital that was injected into the pools and makes bank, and then everyone else has to fight over the last like 35% or 40% of what's left in the pools. That's just kind of how these AMMs work. So like when it comes to how I set up the base pool for Alive, it's set up in a way that it protects the pulse and the resources, the hardcore backing value of the ecosystem by offsetting the weighting on the pool. And so that kind of protects it makes Alive more volatile, but it makes the pulse inside the pool more protected from downside risk, so that the people putting their coins on the market to trade, the guy that's coming into the market or exiting has to put up a lot more liquidity to shift the ratio. So yeah, that's one of the main components I think on that front. So that it's kind of just going to be working for us from the beginning once we get the pools live. And let's see, what else can I think about on that? What else you got?
All right. So I don't know when it is you need to head out. So how about this? I've got one more question I'll ask, and then we can move to close after that. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay, excellent. All right. So what role do you see commitment-based tokenomics playing in the evolution of DeFi?
I love that question, and I wish my dev was here. What?
Especially in the terms of promoting long-term investment over speculation.
Yeah. Well, and so you're never getting rid of speculation, but
yeah,
the beauty of this system being a hybrid between instant gratification and long-term commitment and long-term investment timelines is that it scratches both itches. Like it gives the short-term guys something to do to get them in, and then maybe they're going to change they're going to adopt a new investment mindset over time if they watch this valuation grow. And I think that's what's so disruptive about it, is that you could potentially onboard people into the system who literally just come in for the instant rebate. And then they're like, whatever happens with that happens. I don't really care. And they'll forget about it for a couple of years. Then they might come back on like year 2 or 3 and be like, wow, that's worth a shitload of money now. And
I love it.
Like, I want to talk about it. And so they kind of becomes its own marketing arm. And I did not invent this. Like Richard did this with Hex. We're just leveraging the time value of money. Banking deposits did it before that, but those didn't go up in value. So, mastering the tokenomics here and the liquidity pool setups and adding value back to the Hex fusion, it's all going to be a force multiplier, especially in a Pulsechain bull market. And so I think what you're going to get is tons of adoption, because the dollar values are just going to get kind of crazy. And I think every single system moving forward will adopt some sort of a 2-token fusion, whether they know it yet or not, because Hex is going to have to adopt COM to get the maximum amount of long-term staking commitments in the system. And that's what's in the best interest of the system. Is if everybody staked their Hex for 15 years perpetually forever, there'd be nothing for sale. And everybody once you start getting into years like 7, 8, 9, and 10, you'd have this, you'd have a consistent flow of money a cycling of money from EES payouts gets distributed across the system, enriching still committed users that have been made whole. They've made multiples on their original money. They're the only ones left with supply. And so it's just basically so much economic energy is backlogged into the future that people could EES every day and they're making multiples on their money because there's just nothing available on market. And so I think this is going to be disruptive enough that it's going to prove Hex and Com, and then Hex and Communist is going to get adopted by the staker class. That's my prediction. I'll say something crazy that Johnny Sachs said, and he believes that buying a quadrillion Com today will pay you better long term than putting in a 1,555,555 Hex stake today.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, he might even take it a step further. He might up it to 10 million because he thinks that you'd be able to beat the returns of a 15-year stake with buying Com today. Just in terms of like what it could mean if the price of Com gets high enough and you're onboarding long-term Hex stakers into the system always, because it's automatically marketing itself because the system's just the amount that people are getting back for committing to staking is so much that it just keeps feeding into itself like a loop.
Mm-hmm.
And the staker class keeps buying up the Com price, and there's no Com available because Com is already scarce and it's subject to the T-share. So as T-share rate goes up, Com gets more scarce and requires more Hex staked for longer to get the same amount. Same way that Hex T-shares require more Hex to be staked for longer to get the same amount. So it's subject to the same rules. And it's going over most people's heads. And it's going to be amazing. It's disruptive, and I'm here for it. So I'm very proud of the team, and I'm excited.
That's excellent. Yeah. Man, it's crazy to think about like how I don't know if Richard Hart did this on purpose, but what he wanted to do is he played the game and the marketing of people who are in it, for the money, right? And then he started creating the idea and almost like a cult, right? Of, hey, you need to stake, right? Because you're going to pay your future self. And a lot of the people, a lot of hexicans, right? I noticed that our community does have a lot of people, that are trying to ascend, right? They're trying to become better human beings every single day. And part of that is by learning to wait for your payouts, right? And so it's really interesting thinking about just how he almost backloaded, almost want to say, all of the economic energy way out into the future, which means that it's only going the windfalls are only going to be getting better the longer we stay here,
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. I've learned a lot from him, and Hex is still the GOAT. So we repay our respects, and we help and reinforce that original ethos of Hex, which was long-term committing to something and believing in something and being a part of something bigger than yourself. And if we're successful in this, Axis holders are going to be really happy. So,
oh yeah, for sure. All right. With that being said, so if you guys want any more of this, right, you can go ahead and follow me over on my Twitter. Also, you need to follow Access Alive for sure over on his, which, by the way, I don't think I have any of your stuff. If you want to go ahead and throw them in the private chat so that way I can spam your socials out here, all your links and everything, I would appreciate that. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you to be able to shill yourself. I mean, where can people get a hold of you? And where can they find you and just watch?
Yeah, man. We're going to be launching before Monday, so we're literally potentially hours away from launching. And so keep your eyes on my x.com/accessalive, or go check the site. There'll be a blog post that gets posted right away with some documentation. And beyond that, there's a Telegram called t.me/accessalive.app, which I will post in here. And that's where you can go to start the conversation. And I appreciate you for having me on. Axisalive.com if you want to sign up for the group. it's been a pretty successful 6 months for us in there.
Excellent. I love it. And then I got the Telegram right here. I'm clicking around on things. It's hilarious. Yeah, this app. Guys, go check out this app, by the way. This is something special. Oh, wait, I guess we already put it in there. I'm doubling up on things now. Yay! All right, awesome. Epic. Well, with that being said, you guys got a lot of information here. Watch it another like 3 times over because this is some pretty deep stuff. And there's a lot you can learn here. So with that being said, I am the Ascending Man. This is Ascending Tech. And remember, every single day, you should try and do something a little bit smaller or maybe really big to always try and ascend yourself a little bit higher. Remember, you always want to become better tomorrow than you are who you are today. And with that being said, we're going to head right back out. So I hope you have yourselves an absolutely amazing day. See you later.
See you guys.